I was supposed to call in sick again today, but somebody called me a coward last Monday, so here I am. Anyway, this is my privilege speech. Gusto ko happy ka. Iyan po ang campaign slogan ng ating Senate President nung siya ay kandidato pa noong 2010 elections. Bumenta po iyan. Marami pong sumakay dyan. Pero ang nakakalungkot, sa pagpatakbo ng Senado, malayo ito sa katotohanan. Kasi po, ang kalakaran talaga dito ay kung gusto ko, isasagasa ko, kung ayaw ko, uupuan ko. There are many instances to illustrate this prevailing policy under Senator Enrile and some of my colleagues, particularly Senator Pia Cayetano and Senator Joker Arroyo, may have been at the receiving end more often than the others. As for myself, being a newcomer and the youngest at that, while I was uncomfortable being shoved around every now and then, I gamely took everything as part of the learning process and figured that's just how it is here in this august chamber. I am a very patient man. Well, not necessarily before the August or the Oakwood incident in 2003, but 7.5 years in prison can do that to you sometimes. But one incident a couple of months ago jolted me into the realization that this shabby treatment and even shabbier policy should not be tolerated anymore. Last July 24, a day after the President's SONA, a caucus was called at the Senate President's office. We were not informed of the agenda, so I assumed right away that it was probably about something really important. Eventually, of course, I learned that the principal item on the agenda was not about national security or even of national significance. It was about the local bill on the division of the province of Camarines Sur. Without elaborating on the details of what happened in that caucus, suffice to say that I was shoved aside for the end time. Ito na naman po, kung gusto ko, isasagasa ako. I got out of that caucus feeling trampled upon by a bully determined to get his way. My neophyte instincts were telling me then to just keep the peace and get out of his way. But then, the public servant in me just couldn't let this thing pass. As a matter of public policy, dividing provinces or carving out new ones is not beneficial to the state or the people of the affected province. Otherwise, let's just divide all the big provinces for as long as they meet the requirements as provided for in law, and we'd probably end up with around 200 provinces in total. A few exceptions could be when there are two distinct and warring tribes occupying one province, or when a province is composed of two large islands that are administratively cumbersome. But in the case of Camarines Sur, neither of these conditions are present or is present. Of course, there is the cop-out, we should let the people decide argument. I've heard this from the Senate President several times, that I was almost convinced that he actually believed it. Almost. Because if he really does, then I would immediately initiate the division of his Cagayan province and expect him to have the same zeal and vigor that he has in rushing this bill. This argument, if allowed to be the basis for the approval of this bill, will henceforth reduce the whole process of succeeding similar bills from the committee hearings, interpellations, and up to the third reading as a mere ministerial duty of the Committee on Local Government and the Senate. Because at the end of the day, if anyone would oppose, somebody would just say, we should let the people decide. In my limited understanding of my job description, that is not why we are here. If, as a Senator of the Republic, as a representative of the people, you see that something is patently detrimental to the interest of the state, in this case the province and the public, you should not let it pass, or at the very least, oppose it. This is the essence of a representative democracy. Then again, our Senate President is a very smart man, and I know for sure that he knows this. But with his "kung gusto ko, isasagasa ko" policy, he will use such arguments if he finds it convenient. Now, this is a sad part. Everyone in this august chamber knows that this bill is gerrymandering in its worst kind, particularly one that would provide for new elective positions to accommodate 2 3-term congressmen. But if it were so, why would our Senate President be particularly interested to the point of straining relations with members of the very Senate that he leads? Is it just to please Congressman Villafuerte? And why would he rush it to the point of dictating on a chief of staff of a fellow senator on what his principal should do and when he should schedule his committee hearings? Worse, our Senate President didn't even cancel the session at the height of the Habagat rains when all government agencies already did, just so this bill could be tackled. The Senate President even said that this bill should be passed immediately to relieve him of the pressure. What? The great Senator Enrile could be pressured? I remember him saying otherwise during the last impeachment proceedings. Is the pressure coming from Congressman Villafuerte, who we often see loitering about at the Senator's Lounge, the Senate President's office, and even personally lobbying to senators while we are in session? As persistent as Congressman Villafuerte is, I doubt if our Senate President would be pressured by him. Annoyed probably, but not pressured. Of course, President Aquino cannot possibly be the source of the pressure since this bill isn't even in the President's legislative agenda. I kept on looking for a possible explanation for our Senate President's irrational behavior, and it finally came in the form of a news report by Ms. Cristina Mendez of the Philippine Star dated September 6, 2012. In the report, Ms. Mendez's source revealed that it was Congresswoman and former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo who personally called up the Senate President to speed up the measure. This information was also validated by one of our colleagues. With this totally unexpected twist, everything seemed to fall into place. Now there remain only 2 possibilities: that our Senate President is deeply indebted to GMA, or that he is a GMA lackey. Either way, I have lost trust, faith, and confidence in Senator Enrile's capability to lead the Senate along the path consistent with the reform agenda that I espouse. I therefore manifest that I am leaving the majority and consequently joining the minority effective this day. Thank you.
So I would like to ask questions from the gentleman. Session suspended. May I ask some questions from the gentleman if he can
Excuse me,
answer?
session is resumed. The Senate President is recognized.
Well, I can very well understand the purpose of this privileged speech. Today, somebody in this chamber was in the headlines for meddling in foreign affairs, and probably this is one way to camouflage it. But just to set the record straight, this is the first time in my whole career as a senator that I was accused of railroading or pressuring people in the Senate. Isn't it a fact, Your Honor, that you appeared in that caucus late? Do you remember what time you arrived in that caucus?
Yes,
When we were all there?
Yes, Mr. President. I arrived there late,
Yes.
but I arrived early enough to capture the essence of what was talked about.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. President.
And we were discussing about the timetable to be undertaken regarding the division of the province of Camarines Sur.
Yes, Mr. President.
Correct?
Correct, Mr. President.
And there was Congressman Villafuerte in the room.
Yes,
correct?
Mr. President. Correct.
And at the time you entered, the one talking was the chairman of the Finance Committee, Senator Franklin Drilon, correct?
Yes, correct, Mr. President.
And do you remember what was being discussed at that time?
The timeline
Correct.
regarding the bill, Mr. President.
And that was the reason why Congressman Villafuerte was asked to enter the room because I did not know about the timeline that he was talking about. And you did not know this because you were late.
Yes, Mr. President, but I don't see the relevance of the point you're making right now because I hardly touched on the details of the caucus, Mr. President. Because I believe the details
Well,
of what
I
happened
am
in the
asking
caucus
questions. I don't think you know the rules. I
Yes,
can ask you anything under the sun. I'm going to ask some more questions about you.
yes, Mr.
All right.
President. Then I will answer.
Then just
that,
answer my
that's
question,
irrelevant. Yes,
please.
Mr. President.
If you are a gentleman, and I assume that you are, answer my questions.
Yes, Mr. President.
Now, isn't it that at that point, it was Senator Drilon who was discussing the timeline with Congressman Villafuerte when you entered the room?
Yes, Mr. President.
And did I say anything to pressure you to favor one side or the other?
Precisely, Mr. President. That's not the point. After Senator Drilon spoke, I registered my opposition on the bill, and the Senate President brushed me off.
Well-
Sani, okay na ito, Mr. President.
your opposition should have been registered here because we are going to vote here anyway. And that was a caucus. We have already agreed on the timeline. And if you remember, the gentleman from Camarines Sur, Congressman Villafuerte, was pleading with us to just have the hearing conducted because they were running on a very, very tight schedule. And as President of the Senate, it was my duty to hear everybody. And that's why precisely I could not decide the issue because I'm not like that. I have to present it to the members of the Senate in a caucus. And whatever is decided by the caucus, I abide by it, even during impeachment. Were you not present in these caucuses? Is there any instance where I ask you or any one of you to vote according to my wishes?
Mr. President,
I'm asking you a question.
That's irrelevant from this. I can cite several instances.
You know, it's irrelevant because
Yes.
you are telling falsehoods here.
I take exception to that statement.
I
Mr.
am
President.
saying you're telling falsehoods here
Well,
because there are records of our proceedings.
Well, Mr. President,
All right.
okay.
Isn't it a fact that you are angry at me because you were asking me for an additional budget for your oversight committee and I did not allow it?
No, that is a falsehood,
All
Mr.
right.
President.
Okay, but the record is
Which
such
record?
now.
Which record, Mr. President? Which record, Mr. President? Can, if you want, if you are actually daring this representation, Mr. President, for us to take out the list that detailed the actual budget for all the oversight. We can go there, but I'm not inclined to, Mr. President.
You know, Mr. Senator, I was the one who took you out of the rut where you were imprisoned in Camp Crame. I never did this before. I went out of my way to talk to people so that you can get back here in the Senate, and I guaranteed your presence here. But I'm not saying this because
Precisely
I want
you're
you
saying
to
it, Mr.
owe
President.
any favor to me. I'm just putting that on record to show the character of each one of us here. Okay, second, I'm sure that you resented my statement when we were in the cabinet, when you were presenting your supposed position as against the position of the Department of Foreign Affairs, when President Aquino invited me to attend a cabinet meeting on the Scarborough problem, and I told you, who authorized you to make a backroom negotiation with the Chinese for the Scarborough?
Yes, and the
And
President...
you were telling me about treason, remember?
Yes, and
That
the President
Secretary of Just a minute.
answered you directly that he authorized me. He told it in your face, Mr. President.
What? Yes, that's correct.
Oh, that's correct.
I accepted that because I
Precisely.
did not know that you were authorized. But the fact is that I asked you, whom did you talk to in China?
I don't need to report to the Senate President, Mr. President.
You have a duty
I
to
am not,
report what you do
obliged.
as a senator to this chamber. And in fact, you have a duty to notify the office of the Senate President when you leave this country to go abroad.
But I did
And
not.
the only time that I have authorized you is one time. I do not know how many times you have been to China. My understanding is you have been to China talking to the Chinese government for 6 times already.
Yes. And I
And that
did
you
not,
have met them 15 or 16 times. For
Yes.
what reason? We do not know. Are you becoming a fifth columnist of the Chinese in this country?
the Senate President is not privy to the backroom channel talks, and I'm not obliged in any way to
I think you
divulge.
have a duty to inform the people.
I'm not. I have already informed the people, but not the Senate President. I'm not obliged to report to the Senate President, and all this line of questioning is irrelevant again. And should this line of questioning continue, I will have to say that I will refuse to yield anymore the floor.
No, I'm asking you. I'm asking you a question. You went to China. You asked the ambassador of the Philippines there, Madam Brady, for a meeting, and you said, do not take notes during our conversation. And you called the Secretary of Foreign Affairs a traitor. In fact, you told me that he committed treason.
Yes, it was an executive session, and we're not supposed to
And I
divulge
will
what's
read.
happening in
You
the...
want? I will read it to
What-
the record your conversation with Brady
But it's
and his
supposed to
notes to the Department of Foreign
It's
Affairs.
supposed to be a confidential matter.
Yes, but there's nothing confidential.
Even in the executive meeting, cabinet meeting, in the cabinet meeting in Malacanang, Mr. President, I will refuse to answer if that's
Because
going
you
to be the
cannot
line.
answer the
No,
questions I'm
because
going
it's
to ask
going
you
to
about
be
your
improper
meeting.
in this particular interpellation.
Because you cannot answer
I
the
can
questions
answer.
I'm going to
I
ask
can
you.
answer, but I won't be baited into that trap.
You met,
The point
you met
here
Brady.
is, Mr. President, this is
Mr.
how I felt.
President, may I request this gentleman
Mr. President,
to
in
be
that case,
admonished.
I will refuse to yield the floor anymore
Well,
for
in that case, I
any
will read
interpellation.
read into the record the notes that Mrs. Brady or Ambassador Brady wrote about your conversation with her in Beijing on August 12, 2012. You want me to read
A point
this?
of order, Mr. President.
You want me to read this?
A point of
What is the
order.
point of order?
The
from Bicol?
Senate President may reveal sensitive information pertaining to foreign relations and national security. And I believe it is out of order in
You
this
do not teach me what
session.
the parliamentary proceedings. I'm not answerable to anybody
There
about
is a
what
point
I
of
say
order,
in this hall.
Mr. President.
The Senate President may proceed.
All right, and I have here the white paper that you've been writing about the Secretary of Foreign Affairs. August 17 2012. He cannot take the hit. He's a coward. Senator Trillanes requested that no notes be taken. That's one. Two, what the Chinese want is to tone down the rhetoric. He met the night before
Mr. President.
with the senior Chinese
Point of order, Mr.
MFA
President.
officials.
Mr. President, excuse
With the
me, point of
permission.
order.
Yes.
Mr.
The
President,
gentleman from Taguig.
just a point of inquiry and a point of order. Senator Trillanes had the floor, and he refuses to answer more questions. So the Senate President has all the right to continue and to speak if he rises on a point of personal privilege.
Well,
But-
then I will take the
Yeah, yes, Mr. President. My apologies, sir. I'd just like to also mention that I am sad that this discussion is taking place, and I understand, sir, the sensibilities. But may I also just put on record that, or ask the chair, Mr. President, that if some of these things we're discussing now affects national security, although I deeply regret that this is happening, I deeply understand, Mr. President, the sensitivities being taken place.
Your Honor, I've been
Yes, sir.
in charge of national security in this country before you were born. And I know what I'm talking about.
Yes, Mr. President, I'm just saying that since we are entering an emotional phase of the discussion.
No, I'm not
Mr.
emotional.
President.
The truth must be told.
Anyway, Mr. President, no one can stop a senator from standing up and saying his
I
piece.
did
So
not start this, you know. If
Yes,
you
Mr.
start
President.
the fight with me, then I'll take you on.
yes, Mr. President, I'm not objecting now because he has the right to take the floor on his own time now. I'm just a very humble reminder, sir, that if it is a executive session or if this was told in confidence,
No, I'm
or
going
this
to
affects
speak
national-
to the Filipino
Mr.
people
President.
about this.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, the Senate President has been accused by another colleague.
I will just read
I think
these
we'll let
notes
the,
of Mrs. Brady
We'll let the Senate
about
President continue.
this meeting with Trillanes in Beijing. And one, Senator, this is dated 17 August 2012. These are notes made by, I have it here with me, the official copy. But I had it enlarged because I have a problem with reading. And I will read it to you. Yes. This is my own time now. One, Senator Trillanes requested that no notes be taken. Two, what the Chinese want is to tone down the rhetoric. He met the night before with senior Chinese MFA official, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Three, Senator was initially approached by Executive Secretary. Four, when he got involved, it was in the height of the problem. He had to find out what was happening, so he tried to see whether this was a move of the Americans. He was suspecting the Americans as involved in the conflict. He ascertained that they do not want any conflict, especially in an election year. I think the word "they" there refers to the Chinese. Five, on Secretary delrosario, U.S. has already let him go. Binitiwan na siya. This is the note of Brady. In the July meeting, Hillary Clinton did not speak up for us. Secretary Del Rosario is committing treason. This is a senator of the Republic calling our secretary a treasonous person. In a foreign land, he does not even know when treason arises. 6, we are internationalizing the issue because of Secretary Del Rosario. This is his move. 7, there was never any negotiation between the Chinese and the Americans. Just a meeting with Kurt Campbell. Mr. Campbell was not a negotiator. Besides, Secretary Del Rosario was not there. 8, the arrangement being looked at by the senator, meaning Senator Trillanes, was one side would leave first, then the other side, then the next, etc. They were talking about the manner of evacuating Scarborough. He then received a call from Pinoy saying, why are the Chinese still there? When there was an agreement for simultaneous withdrawal, he thought to himself, this is not the arrangement. He was protecting the Chinese. He asked Manny V. Pangilinan to ask Secretary Del Rosario to keep quiet, to quiet down. This has now happened. The two go a long way back because it was also Secretary Del Rosario who introduced Mr. Pangilinan to the Indonesian businessman. During the days of the PLDT, Secretary Del Rosario confronted the Yuchenko group, shareholders, and threatened them. This is a senator talking back against a cabinet member. 10, the 2+2 meeting in the U.S., Mr. Pangilinan was paying a lobby group to get that meeting. This is number 10. It says the 2+2 meeting in the U.S., Mr. Pangilinan was paying a lobby group to get that meeting. I do not know what that 2+2 meeting was all about. We thought all along it was with the accord of the U.S. 11, DFA was the one who kept releasing press articles. Now the press is turning their back on Secretary Del Rosario. In this way, he is being marginalized. The release of the picture of a man planting flag on Panatag is from the 1980s, so this was rehearsed. On the Hasa grounding of the Chinese frigate, there was supposed to be no press release. But when the DFA got hold of it, it released it to the media. The ramming was also an incident that was released to the press. Trillanes wanted everything that was happening in Scarborough to be made secret so that it will protect the interest of the Chinese. Mr. Pangilinan and Secretary Del Rosario wanted to create an event. He was accusing these two of manipulating a war condition to divert attention from the Reed Bank. The findings there were not substantial, so Mr. Pangilinan asked the Chinese group not to release the findings. They needed time to ensure that they can recover their investment first sell off to another buyer. Imagine. What a senator. Nakakahiya. There were alarmists. 13. There were alarmists in the palace meeting when Secretary delrosario presented the invasion of Luzon. I was there. This is not a total falsehood. So nabilog ang ulo ng lahat. You saw this in the meeting. Even Senate President Enrile wanted to cut relations. This is very alarmist. This gentleman is foisting falsehood. I was there, President Aquino was in front of me. I was directly in front of him, and he was the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, poor Secretary of Foreign Affairs, who was being pilloried by this novato in foreign relations, accusing him of not knowing his job. And I said, I support the position of the Department of Foreign Affairs. We should involve our allies and friends in this discussion because we cannot handle the Chinese on a bilateral basis. But he was insisting on a one-on-one dealings with China. What bargaining position do we have? He's supposed to be a trained military mind, but he does not know anything about military strategy. "14. The senator was inquiring," this is Brady talking, "on which officials could visit China. Because the Chinese side were angry with Pinoy, they suggested his kalaban, the vice president." Imagine intriguing between the president and the vice president. Senators thought perhaps Marrojas na lang. The Chinese side said an official could meet Chinese vice president. 15. In Panatag, Shoal, there was never a problem about their presence. From 66 votes, this was reduced to 3. The Chinese side said they will eventually take out the rope. They may eventually have given time. 16. This is his 12th, according to Mrs. Brady. That was his 12th meeting with the Chinese. Senator Trillanes has been quietly, secretly, clandestinely meeting with the Chinese about the Scarborough and the South China or the West Philippine Sea. Pinoy called the senator when he saw that the Chinese did not keep their word to withdraw. Pinoy did not know of the arrangements being made by the senator. Imagine talking to an enemy of a potential enemy of this country 16 times. What did he discuss with these people? Who initiated the discussion? Did he? Or did they? Did they pay for his trip to Beijing? He should answer. That's why he could not be here, because I'm going to ask him. My God, this guy is a fraud. Where was I? Pinoy gave his clearance to pursue. 17. Pinoy did not know that talks were suspended with the Chinese for 2 weeks. 18. Pinoy gave his clearance to pursue initiatives on back-channel talks. This is his representation to Mrs. Brady. 19. In the Philippines, no one cares about Panatag Shoal. He said to Mrs. Brady, sa Pilipinas, Walang may gusto na sa atin yung panatag, yung Scarborough Shoal. Yan ang sinasabi niya. Pilipino ba yan? Makabayan ba yan? My God, what kind of a senator is this? China was never going to put up a station there. Yun ang sinabi niya. Sinabi ni Trillanes. He was speaking for China. If China wanted to, they would have done so already. That was his position. He did not realize that the whole China Sea is being claimed by China. And yet he claims to be an expert in international law. Expert in security, expert in geopolitical struggle, expert in foreign relations. About Sancha City and the garrison, their senator, meaning Trillanes, said, we also have garrison in KIG. I think this is Kabayan Island group. Garrison ba yun? Ako ang nagpalagay nung airstrip doon para mabigyan natin ng ayuda yung ating mga sundalo doon. Pero hindi garrison yun. Hindi kagaya nung sinusuportahan niya na bansa na meron na mga fortification doon. Para sa kanya, hindi fortification yun, laruan lang yun. Ewan ko sinong nagturo sa kanya sa Philippine Military Academy. Besides, this is for their domestic audience. Domestic audience daw. Pero kinukuha nila ang lugar natin. Pero sa kanya, parte lang ng politika ng China ito. Oh, the Chinese could have attacked our garrison if they wanted to. What a military mind. We also have a sunken ship in the area which we did on purpose. So, ito pinagmamalaki niya. Siguro, baka siya ang nagpalubog dito. Pero hindi ko narinig ito when I was still in the Defense Department. Hanggang ngayon ko lang narinig ito. He told the Chinese, Trillanes told the Chinese, that we cannot enforce our coastal protection. That is the kind of a Filipino senator you have here. He told the Chinese that we cannot enforce our coastal protection. Our fishermen are living on subsistence fishing. They cannot therefore fish too far. Ibig niya sabihin, pamigay na lang ninyo yung Scarborough Shoal. Tumakbo tayo. Sapagkat tayo ay mga duwag. Magkukunwari, pupunta sa galerya, magpapakita sa media para tumakbo lamang. The Philippine side did not make gapang the ASEAN, which the Chinese did. Kalahin mo, sinasabi niyo dapat gapangin natin yung mga ASEAN dahil gumagapang daw yung mga inchik sa boto. Ito, yung tungkol sa nangyari sa Cambodia. Ano pa kialam nitong senador na ito sa foreign relations natin? This guy is involving us with a major problem. he asked Secretary delrosario if we could give this space in the ASEAN meeting because we did not do this preparation. He wanted to become the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, to superimpose his mind to the judgment of the duly designated and appointed shaper of foreign policy for the country. So, now, we fought with everyone. Sabi niya, lumalaban na tayo. Ginapang ng China, pero hindi natin ginawa. Akala ko ba gusto niya peaceful, pero gusto niya makipaggapangan. On the issue of bananas and tourists, they can be fixed quickly if the Chinese leadership wanted. Ayos na ang bananas. Inayos daw niya. Pinagmamalaki niya. Siya daw ang nagpaalis ng mga 40 vapor ng China doon sa Scarborough Shoal. Yun ang pinalalabas niya eh. Pinagtatawanan lang siya. Maski sa Malacanang, marami na bubwisit sa kanya nung nandun kami, kaya lang hindi ko na sinabi sa kanya. The Chinese side suggested a visit of the OTC Secretary to China. Sinabi niya, on the Chinese ships that did maneuvers towards Philippine ship, he said, meaning Trillanes said, that these are ordinary moves that ships would do. Aba, napagkagaling naman itong admiral na ito. Senator was saying, meaning Senator Trillanes was saying that delrosario should be replaced by Mar Rojas. Knowing that reports are coursed through the FA, Senator said he would give an alternate channel so that communications can go directly to the palace. He arrogated unto himself to become the channel of foreign policy from him to Malacanang. I do not know whether the President knows about this. Can go ahead with bilateral. China also want this. He was suggesting and working for a bilateral negotiation with China. And in that meeting in the cabinet, it was agreed that we should not do that. I do not want to discuss anymore the sordid matter. It's enough that I read these notes of Ambassador Brady to unmask this phantom of the opera in Philippine politics. I have here his white paper on the Department of Foreign Affairs, and I would not bother you about it. If you want to read it, I will give it to you and read it. Thank you.